Hi, and welcome to Fun with Grammar, Lesson 4. Now, this is more on verbs. This is a very important lesson because we're dealing with subject-verb agreement. Subjects and verbs, or subjects and predicates, must agree. So singular subjects belong with singular verbs, and plural subjects belong with plural verbs. Now, that should be pretty obvious to us, but this is actually something that students do incorrectly all the time. So let's take a singular subject, I. I go. Singular, singular. When the sentence gets complicated is where students usually mess up. So we're going to take 4 basic rules today, and we're going to talk about some of the ways that students mess up these rules. Now, these are the tough things. Plural subjects are often tricky to identify. Delivery is a singular subject. Of today's newspapers and magazines have been delayed. Now, here's the problem. Newspapers and magazines is not the subject here. Delivery is the subject. So even though delivery is of multiple things, we need to keep in mind that it is the delivery that is the subject. Of today's newspapers and magazines is only modifying that subject. So we cannot say that they have been delayed. We have to say that it has been delayed. Also, intervening words and phrases often mess up what we're doing. So once we have that complicated sentence, remember, all of a sudden all these other things that make our sentences interesting can really mess us up when it comes to subject-verb agreement. So things like in addition to, along with, as well as, and including affect the number. Let's take an example. One of his paintings, along with several sketches, is on display in the library. Now, one is the subject. Paintings and sketches are not the subject. They are modifying that subject. So really, our subject is one, and our predicate is. Keep that in mind. All of that other stuff is just describing the one. Our second basic rule is that subjects composed of more than one subject need to be joined, or if they're joined by and, need to be plural. So that seems pretty simple. The picture and text, go. They, if you replace the picture and text, they would be they go inside the box. So we're talking about a multitude of things. Simple enough. Compound subjects thought of a unit need to be singular. So if we take the example of green eggs and ham, okay, that is considered one unit, right? Green eggs and ham. It's a meal. So green eggs and ham is Reggie's favorite breakfast. It is one breakfast. And singular nouns joined by or nor need to be singular, because basically what we're saying is it's one or the other. So if you keep that in mind, when you look at a Coke or a Pepsi, either a Coke is what I thirst or a Pepsi is what I thirst. So again, it's singular. A Coke is what I thirst. A Pepsi is what I thirst. So keep all this in mind. When the subject, in this case, consists of a singular and a plural, the verb tense matches the noun closest to the verb. So if I said, bad example, but if a Coke or Pepsis are what I thirst. Now we wouldn't use that sentence, that's very poor. But Pepsis is now plural, so then we would change the verb to plural. The next rule we have in subject-verb agreement is that the subject words may be singular or plural, or that singular but sound plural depend on how they're used in the sentence. All right, this sounds pretty complicated, so let's work this out. First of all, a collective noun. Remember we talked about collective nouns before being things like jury or class. If they're used in a singular sense, then use a singular verb, and likewise, if they're used plural sense, use a plural verb. Let's take a couple examples here. So the majority favors a formal senior prom. What we're talking about here is basically a majority and a minority. So these are singular ideas. It's a group. It's collective. So the majority favors. Now in another example, the same word majority, we're talking about the majority have their tickets for the boat sale. So now we're talking about individuals who have their tickets. So if you look at the word their, in this case, majority is implying plural. So therefore we have to change our verb to plural. Names of countries, titles, organizations, certain diseases sound plural. And so they can be a little tricky because they're often singular, but they have a plural sound. Let's take a couple examples and you'll see. For example, the news is good. News is singular. Just because there's an S on it does not make it plural. Measles is going around the school. Measles is one singular disease. Just because it's called measles does not mean that you make it plural. And the World Series is played in October. Again, the World Series is one event. I know it takes place over 7 games, but it's still one event, one World Series. The last problem that we deal with is indefinite pronouns. Now remember those some, none, everyone, both, any. They depend on the sentence. So if you look at the first sentence, some of the collection is valuable. What we're focusing on here is actually the collection. Collection is singular. So collection is what we're talking about here. Now if we look at the second sentence, some of the bracelets are fake. Bracelets are plural. So bracelets are fake. When we're looking at none, it's the same thing. None of the ice cream is left. Ice cream is singular, so none is left. And none of the people is plural. So we want to say people are. None are. Whether it is plural or singular. Let's make sure that we complete the next group of homework, which is the subject-verb agreement handout in your packet and checkpoint